I want to welcome you today to a very, very special teaching. Millions are entering the hour of testing. We're going to explore that subject today on Manna-Fest. Thank you for joining me. And as I said on the previous program last week, we have an offer that is one of the greatest offers God has ever allowed me to put together content-wise. And it stunned me when I began to realize you can track the patterns of satanic attacks and death cycles in your family, death cycles. So we'll talk about that at the end of the program, so stay through the entire program. Now, the present situation that we're now in is incredible because so many Christians right now are struggling in areas that I have never seen them struggle in before. Some of it is personal situations, some of it is family situations, some of it is marital situations. It's just really been very tough for a lot of people. My wife, Pam, fell in Alabama. This is a while back, and she messed up her shoulder, and then she fell and tore her meniscus, and then she has to have a knee replacement, and then she had shingles, and she still has the after effect 1 year later, the after effect and some of the pain from that. And, we had a situation where we were having some basement problems and had to pull out of savings and work on our basement, pull out of savings for a lot of expenses. So for those of you that think that we don't have the same challenges that a lot of you have, think again, because we all are in the same boat when it comes to certain things that happen to us in life. There have been unexpected deaths happen to many of us that have brought great sorrow. I call it weird warfare. There's no other way to describe it, because if you deal with something that's not natural, then it has to be supernatural. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the church at Philadelphia in the book of Revelation, where Christ is addressing them through his servant John the Apostle. And I want to read to you two verses. They're going to come up on the screen. Here's the first one, chapter 3, verse 8 and 9. I know your works. See, I've set before you an open door, and no man can shut it. For you have a little strength, you've kept my word, and have not denied my name. So he's boasting on this great church. By the way, Philadelphia means brotherly love, and it's one of the 7 churches. There were 2 churches Jesus bragged on, and this is only one of those 2 churches. Now, here's another verse that's coming up. Because you've kept my command to persevere, I will keep you from the hour of trial. Now notice that phrase. That's where we're going with this study, which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. So this is something called the hour of testing, which is actually, I guess you could call this a season of testing, because the word hour there in Greek in Revelation chapter 3 is a literal hour, or it can be a figuratively speaking hour, so it means a season of testing. It can also, in the King James, it says a season of temptation, and it's the Greek word parasmos, which means to put to proof, and it actually refers to taking a vessel and piercing it to see the contents in it, what is on the inside of it. So a temptation is a piercing that comes to you, and a test that comes to you, which actually reveals what is on the inside of you. You know, a lot of people boast on how strong they are in the Lord until something happens that puts them through a real test, and then you see their real attitude, you see their hidden motives, you see the thoughts and the intents of their heart actually come out of them when there is a test put to them that's an intense test. Then it says that he will try those. That word try in Greek in Revelation 3 means to put to test those who are dwelling on the earth. So in the context, it said that we would be preserved from the hour of testing. Now, a lot of Bible scholars will look at that verse and say that we believe can allude to the hour of great tribulation, Matthew 24, which is coming on everyone on the earth. So God is going to preserve or keep us from that hour. So that's one of the main interpretations to this verse. But there is a spiritual principle that is also in this verse. You know, when we talk about being preserved, even in the blessing of the priest of the Old Testament in the book of Numbers, the priest would say, the Lord bless and keep you. And that word keep is a Hebrew word that means to preserve, to keep in check, to protect. So what is this hour of testing? Well, an hour of testing is something that will happen to you that will be the worst experience of your entire life. Now, the word hour is mentioned 89 times in the New Testament. So it is a word that's commonly used with different context or with different settings. But there's one example that I want to give you that deals with the ministry of Jesus. In the ministry of Jesus, in John 7, verse 30, they went to seize him. His enemies went to take him away from his ministry. They wanted to do him harm, and it says, I quote, his hour had not yet come. John 8, verse 20, the very next chapter, a group of men sought to take him. They were going to do him bodily harm and stop his ministry, but we read, quote, but his hour had not yet come. We go several chapters later to John chapter 13 and verse 1, and we read this. Jesus knew that his hour had come. Now, here's the point I want to make. When his hour for his crucifixion and his suffering to come, before it happened, a ship couldn't drown him, a storm couldn't drown him, they could not stone him, no one could kill him, no one could harm him, because he was under a supernatural divine protection from his Father during the time of his ministry. But when it came time for his hour to come, all four Gospels will tell you what happened. He is arrested, and then he goes through the scourging with the cat of nine tails. He's left alone in a dungeon. He then goes to the cross. Of course, he's publicly humiliated. They spit upon him. They mock him. He's publicly crucified. Only his mother and the Apostle John are actually staying faithful to him at the cross. And so all of these terrible things happen at one time. Now, have you ever had a time in your life where you said to yourself, we're in a time when all hell has broken loose, and the test or trial that you're in is so weird and so intense that you have never seen anything like it, and it's like it doesn't end. It gets worse, and it gets worse, and you expect good news, but bad news comes. Now, that is what you call an hour of testing. Now, I want to say something. For those of you who enjoy creating a test and a trial for other people, that you have sat back and you said you're going to bring it down and you're going to destroy this. Let me just tell you this. Can I predict something to you? Your hour is coming. You are going to reap what you have sown. You reap to the wind, you're going to get a whirlwind. You haven't seen it yet. You think everything's fine and you've made it through. No, no, no. God has kept a record. And so you better be careful, because with the same judgment you judge, it will come back to you. And sometimes it comes back to the person who did the offense or created it. Woe to him to whom the offenses come. Woe to the person that creates them, Jesus said. So you need to understand that when the hour comes, it's going to be tough. It's tough for anyone that goes through those hours of and let me say this. Job is an example. Good people will go through an hour of testing. Now, if you look at Satan's purpose in the life of Jesus, what was he trying to do? He was trying to end his life and end his ministry. God's purpose, however, was to bring about redemption and eternal life. So we look at Christ and we see that example. Protected when there was no hour of testing from all kinds of trials. Then the hour of testing comes and everything that can go wrong goes wrong. It is as though nothing is going right, but yet it is the plan of God, to bring about redemption, because the Bible said if the princes of the world would have known that they would have been defeated through the cross, they would have never have crucified the Lord of glory. Now, when you look at the purposes of an hour of testing for you as an individual, we know that when we look at the Apostle Peter, the Lord said to him, or Christ said to him, Satan has desired you that he may sift you as wheat, but I've prayed that your faith fail not. So Satan's will is to test your faith to cause you to give up. Satan's will is that you will trust him and endure it and come out on the other side. Now, I want to say something else. It's very important for you to understand this. I have learned the difference between how Satan acts during an hour of testing and what God is doing during an hour of testing. And I want to share these with you. This is important. First of all, if you look at Satan, Satan does everything in public. I want to say it again. Satan will use people and do everything in public. He'll get journalists, media people, YouTube people that don't even know who they're talking about or what they're saying, just to build their little audience up and be a social influencer. No, you're a social failure if you're a gossip and a backbiter and a slant. You are not an influencer. You're a failure, and you're going to be in severe trouble one day at the bema or the great white throne judgment for what you're doing, in hope that you can destroy the body of Christ. I'll just say that up front to some of you. But watch this. Satan always works in public, but I want you to remember what I'm about to say to you. God works in private. Oh boy, I wish I had time to explain that to you in detail. Satan always works in public. He wants to be heard. He wants to be seen. He wants maximum damage. But all the time Satan is working, you're saying to yourself, God, where are you? Will you listen to me? If you'll put your trust in him, he works in private. I can't tell you the number of times, and I won't go into detail, that someone walked in my office and said, look at that right there. And I say, wow, God just stopped that, didn't he? They say, look at that right there. Wow, God just did that. That's amazing. We didn't know God was going to do that, but he did it because he works in private. And then that way you know he did it, not you, and he gets the glory for it. You know, when Job was going through everything he went through, it was very public. Everybody knew that he lost his kids. They knew he lost his livestock. They knew he lost his health. And here's what Job says in Job 23, 8 through 10. Look, I go forward, but he is not there. Speaking of God, and backward, but I cannot perceive him. When he works on the left, and I cannot behold him. When he turns to the right hand, I cannot see him. But he knows the way that I take, and when he has tested me, I shall come forth as pure gold. Now, the left hand of God is always the side of trouble and darkness. The right hand is the side of favor and blessing. And Job was saying, I've looked to find favor and can't get it. I'm living on the left hand of God because trials are breaking out. But I do know this, when this trial is over, I am going to be a better person. I'm going to come out like pure gold. I'm going to come out with a better prayer life. I'm going to come out trusting God in a greater way. Now, here's something some of you need to hear that I have learned by experience. I want to teach you a few things. At times, God will move in a way that you don't understand, that doesn't make sense, and it looks like that you're being opposed, but God is behind the scenes literally moving you to rescue you from a wrong decision or a wrong future. Now, in 1981 and 82, I was having some really big revivals. I was a teenage preacher. I got married in April the 2nd of 1982. But at the time I was single and I was looking for a headquarters. My mom and dad had left Salem, Virginia, and they were living in Florida, and I didn't want to move to Florida. So I went to this area of Virginia, which I knew many people. In fact, I had hundreds, literally, of people that had been won to my ministry in this area. And I had some friends. I picked a board. I picked a ministry name, and I had them get all my books here and count them and move them up to this place in Virginia. Well, Virginia is a commonwealth, and it's not at all like Tennessee. Now, I love Virginia, don't get me wrong, but Tennessee is a much easier place to work with a nonprofit organization, in my opinion, especially in the Northern Virginia area. And so it was the wrong place. Well, the Lord allowed circumstances to come that I thought this is just the enemy, but in the retrospect, God was keeping me from moving to an area that would not have been the right area. Guess where the right area was? Cleveland, Tennessee. I didn't know Cleveland had a long prophetic word from 1959 on it about the end-time revival till years later after I moved here. So I look back, here 40-some years later. If we look at when I was married, it would be 44 years later from marriage. And we now have buildings. We have the Omegas International, the Voice of Evangelism has 4 buildings. We have 120 acres of ministry property. We are centralized. When people come to conferences, we are centralized about 7 hours from most of the major cities between the Midwest and the East Coast, Northeast, most of them, not all, of course. And so here's what I'm trying to say to you. What looked like trouble was actually God bringing a rescue. Let me say something else. Sometimes, if the Lord does not want someone or a group of people in your life, He will create a situation where there is contention that arises that separates you from those people. Now, one of the lessons that I would share with you is never try to put in your life whom God took out of your life, ever. Now, pray for people, love people, forgive people, but never let them back in when God says, you know what? They need to be on their own. They need to do their own vision. They need to do their own thing, and that thing is not with you. So sometimes you will, and I don't know who I'm talking to here, but sometimes you will despise trouble when what you need to do is put everything on pause, put your mind in neutral. Don't go in reverse and back up. Don't go forward too quick with your own things. Put everything on pause. And look, this is where patience is required. Patience is God's pause. Woo! Somebody tweeted and said, Paris don't say it. That patience is God's pause. And it really is. So when you operate in patience, you're operating on a pause moment to say, let me see how God is going to work this out. Now, Psalms chapter 3, 1 through 2, I want to show you this. Lord, how they have increased to trouble me. Many are they that have risen up against me. Many are they who say of me, there is no help for him in God. Now imagine this. There are people who love David. They said they love David. They've turned on David. And they're now saying, there's no help for him in God. They're saying God has turned against him. God hates him. God doesn't want nothing to do with him. Was that true? No, that wasn't true. Did he sin? Yes. Did he sin horribly? Yes. Did he do wrong? Yes. So now the people around him who are the godly people, there's no help for him in God. We believe in justice. Justice has been served. God is a God. You know, you see, you're making fun. I'm making fun of those people who mock David. It's who I'm making fun of because they've got skeletons in their own closet. So here's what David said to answer them. Listen, I cried to the Lord with my voice. He heard me from his holy hill. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who set themselves against me. Whoa! So what did David do? They're saying there's no help for him in God. He said, I cried to the Lord and God heard me. Well, guess what? There was help for him in God. And so you need to understand that you are not what people are saying. You are not what people are trying to make you. You are who you are in God. And if you know who you are in God, that's what matters, because that's the person that's going to stand before him face to face one day, okay? So let me just say this to you. In the book of Daniel, there's a very powerful last day verse, and I've got to read this to you. Some of those of understanding shall fall to refine them, to purify them, and make them white until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time. So what I'm trying to say to you is millions of you watching me right now are in an hour of testing. And that hour of testing in Daniel is God attempting to purify you. So he allows you to go through an hour of testing. Now, 3 things are going to happen to you. Oh, this is not pretty, but you need to hear it. Pay attention. 3 things are going to happen to you during an hour of testing. Matthew 3 and 10, God will lay the axe to the root of the tree. There's some roots, there's some things on your tree shouldn't be there. And he starts cutting down those the tree, and sometimes he uproots it and replants it all over again from a new start. Number 2, in Matthew chapter 3 and verse 12, there is a threshing floor that burns up the chaff. Now, wheat has hard chaff on it that has to be separated. You can't eat the wheat with the chaff on it. So the wheat is brought to into the barn or into the Father's house, so to speak, and the chaff is burnt with an unquenchable fire. So there has to come not only sometimes the laying the axe to the root of the tree is separating you from certain relationships and people, but secondly, there has to be a purging, which is a separating of those things. The chaff, which is just the trash and the junk hanging on, has got to come off. It's got to be put away. It's got to be burnt. So there's going to be some burning take place. Number 3, John chapter 15, verse 2, he said, I'm the vine and you're the branches, but a vine that does not produce fruit will be trimmed so that it can produce more fruit. Now, how does that work? It works like this, that in a vineyard, there are some branches that become dead. They don't produce anything, but they sap the life out of the living branches. So they cut them and trim them. And then as they grow back with new life. So you're going to be pruned if you do and pruned if you don't. So in other words, these things that God allows you to go through, this is important you hear me, is not to harm you, it is not to hurt you, it is not to destroy you. It is to purge you, to make you white, to refine you in the fire so that you come out with greater faith, greater trust, greater confidence, more zeal for him, and you start producing more fruit. Now, we do know that in the last days, there's 2 things that's going to happen. Daniel chapter 7:25, he shall wear out the saints of the Most High God and speak great words against the Most High God. The word wear out there in the Arabic is to wear out mentally. So there's going to be a mental wearing down of so many of God's people at the time of the end by what I call the spirit of Antichrist. And then we find out Galatians 6 and 9, be not weary in well-doing, for you shall reap if you faint not. That's a verse the Lord gave me in my old Bibles. I have it written down as a teenager, because I would notice I would go to one town and have a great revival with many saved or filled with the Spirit. I'd go to another church and it was just dead. And I would get weary in well-doing. And maybe I'd go to one or two churches and it was just, okay, here's a young preacher. We're coming out to hear him preach, but there wasn't results. I love to see God move with results. So the Lord would say to me, don't be weary in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not. Two more verses. For this cause we faint not, though our outward man perish, the inward man is renewed day by day. For our light affliction, that which is but for a moment, worketh more exceedingly an eternal weight of glory, while we look at the things which are seen, but don't look at the things that you see. Look at the things that you can't see, the Bible says. So in other words, what we're dealing with these trials is temporal, to bring us a greater weight of glory in the things of God. And we walk in the weight of glory by renewing our mind every day. Let me say something. Renewing of your mind is something that absolutely has to happen on a daily basis. It is not a one-time thing. And let me just say something. If you start dealing with people that are attacking you, I want you to remember one thing that my wife and I have said for many years. They are going to go to the judgment to answer how they treated you. So that's why we say we keep ourselves right with God, and that's the biggest thing. Keep yourself right, keep your heart right, and let God judge the others in His due time. Well, I hope this has encouraged you and giving you some instruction word. Keep watching, because you will want to see what I'm about to say, and I think you're going to want to get this. Most interesting thing I think I've ever had God give me.
In the Dark Kingdom, there are crafty, familiar spirits linking back to your ancestors that continue to design seasonal attacks, targeting your family on specific timed moments. However, armed with this stunning insight, you can track their timing to cut off their intended plots. In Perry Stone's gripping new book, Return of the Dark Angel, he uncovers how your family may be encountering supernatural warfare involving an unclean or familiar spirit, character weaknesses, dangerous bondages, secret sin cycles, and death cycles that you can now unmask and expel from your present and future lineage. Perry will explain how he was informed that a dark angel was assigned against him every 12 years. Through months of investigation, Perry discovered these 12-year attack cycles, including a strange pattern in his Italian family. For over 120 years, family deaths occurred in a strange 12-year pattern. Through family documentation, Perry discovered the trail of an ancient spirit linked with his early ancestors' involvement in the Italian Black Hands Mafia, including making and selling moonshine during Prohibition in Central West Virginia, which caused early deaths. In Perry's book, he reveals topics such as my besetting sin and personal troubles, the 12-year cycles of the Dark Angel explained, the strange 12-year death angel visitation, a family sin that cost the lives of 2 children, breaking a generational pornography spirit, why the enemy targets your firstborn child more than others, the need to take a ride in the hills to avoid a hearse, how and why Satan commissions hindering spirits to obstruct God's will in your life, how to chart out your personal and family attacks to prevent them, how your weakness can become your strength, healing deep soul wounds. Discover the undetected and most effective weapons Satan is using right now. Preparing for a sudden counterattack. Using 3 weapons most Christians never use in a serious conflict. 7 life lessons you must learn now to win in the end. Armed with this amazing knowledge, you can track and detect upcoming plots and cut them off, shutting the door in advance on their strategy. When ordering this book, Perry will also include a 2-audio CD teaching Christian Cannibals in the Church, Biting and Devouring One Another in God's Name. This is an explosive expose exposing a dangerous social media feeding frenzy. Every believer must hear this timely, detailed teaching. This audio teaching is available for immediate download when you order from our website. Order offer DA149, which includes Perry's new book, Return of the Dark Angel, and new 2 audio CD teaching, Christian Cannibals in the Church, by calling toll-free 1-888-21-BREAD. That's 1-888-212-7323, or order online at perrystone.org. You can also write to us at Perry Stone, P.O. Box 3595, Cleveland, Tennessee 37320, and enclose your gift of $30 or more to request package offer DA149. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
You know, when we wrote the book, Return of the Dark Angel, the first chapter, I was telling someone about it, and they said, boy, that'll get attention. The first chapter says, my besetting sin and personal struggles. The second chapter is Satan has a target on your firstborn child. This book right here is the brand new book. I was under a real strong burden to get this out to people, because I kept noticing in families that they would go through a cycle of divorce. Mom and dad divorced, then maybe a couple years later, the son and daughter divorced. A couple years later, the daughter and her husband divorced. In other words, I may have said that wrong, but you know what I'm saying, it was just a series of divorces. Suicides are the same thing. And so please get this. This is one of the most important books I think the Lord has ever given me, and it's full of revelation. It's not stuff, it's nothing rehashed from the past, it's new. And please, let me just say something. I'm gonna read the back of this, okay? Mature Christians are aware of sins of the flesh, yet few understand sins of the spirit. Too many Christians accept the sins of backbiting, unforgiveness, and gossip, yet these are all dangerous and can cause you, and I'll prove from the Bible, to forfeit your own mercy. Best offer, in my opinion, in about 4 years on Manna-Fest, maybe 5 years. Now, having said that, if you live in these areas, maybe you can join me. I'm coming to Alaska, and you folks that live in Alaska, I know it's a long drive between cities, but we're coming to Saldonta, Alaska, June the 4th through the 8th. Sherry Morris is hosting that there at Trinity Christian Center. We're coming to Redemption Church with Ed King in Knoxville, Tennessee, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, June 20, 21, and 22. And then my family and I are taking a lot of the month of July off. I'm working on a lot of tapings, some new DVDs, going and starting to really focus on the children's outreach, because this is going to be phenomenal. You guys have heard me announce this, have absolutely no clue to what's being planned with this and where this is going. It's going to be fantastic. And then we're going to pick up in August, September, October of almost nonstop weekend meetings until we go to Israel for our VIP trip and our main tour, the Lord willing, in the month of November. Go to perrystone.org for more information.